The Asics Novablast 5. A bunch of minor tweaks and one big change now make this shoe punch well above its weight. First things first, tragic shaving accident. Don't use a new razor with a new blade before you're going to sit down and record a video. Just saying. The Novablast is a shoe that I actually look forward to every year now because I think it's an important one to talk about because it is such a popular shoe. But the Novablast has had a bit of a rocky history over the past 5 years. When the Novablast 1 first launched back at the end of 2019 or early 2020, depending on when you saw it, it was a shoe that was completely unexpected, especially from Asics. It was a ride that was very crazy, but very fun, and again, something that no one expected from Asics, and it's the shoe that's responsible for setting Asics down the path that they've been on for the past 5 years as really the darlings of the running shoe industry. So when they updated that with the Novablast 2 and they dialed down the crazy, made it much more calmer, it became a better overall shoe, but I think a lot of the people that like the fun of the crazy were missing that. So when Asics dialed down the Novablast 3 a bit more to that really calm side, I think that's where this shoe became that really go-to all-around daily trainer for a lot of people. I wasn't a fan of it, and I've talked a lot about that on this channel. Links in the descriptions to a few videos about that. But across really any place you look at running shoe, anything, the Novablast 3 in that year was insanely popular. So when the Novablast 4 came out last year, and there's a little bit more of that fun brought into the shoe with the foam and the geometry and just the changes in the shoe, I was really happy that I actually really enjoyed the 4, and it was one of my best shoes of 2024. But here we are now with the Novablast 5, and Asics has dialed back some of that crazy, some of that fun into a shoe that has the foundation of the daily trainer, but now it can do a lot more. Starting with the specs of this shoe, we have essentially the same geometry and the same specs as the Novablast 4. We still have 41.5 mil of foam in the heel, 33.5 mil of foam in the forefoot, giving you an 8 mil drop. Though I will say that now this shoe's 8 mil drop feels like an 8 mil drop. Last year's felt a little bit higher to me than that. This feels like a real 8 mil drop. Now the shoe comes in at 8.9 ounces or right at 9 ounces or 255 grams. That's what Asics specs for the standard reference size of US men's size 9. But in the shoes that I actually have, my pair, they're actually a little bit under that, and they're actually even. They're both the same, 254 grams or 8.95 ounces. And that, again, I just think speaks to Asics' build quality, and this is definitely an Asics shoe. The build quality is exceptional. And overall, the ride I would call this is springy, but I'll get to that in the midsole section. Starting with the upper and the fit of this shoe, I'm going to be totally honest. I'm not finding any real fit difference in this shoe over last year's Novablast 4. It fits my foot nearly identically, though there are two things that I do find a little bit different. Now, it still has ample room in the forefoot. The material is conforming to the foot, but there's still plenty of volume here for your toes to move or wiggle around. The midfoot still locks the foot down okay, though I think the eyelet chain is a little fussy still, but it does a decent job. The Achilles flare is still very stout. There's a deep pocket here with a lot of padding around the ankle counter. There should be no issues with heel lift in this shoe. And overall, when I wear this on my foot, in contrast to Novablast 4 on the other foot, I don't really feel much difference. The one difference I do feel is in the toe box, and it is in the width, but I don't think the shoe's any wider here. What I think's going on is this new technical mesh material of the upper, I think, is just more structural. It just stays off the foot a bit more, and there's a deeper toe bumper in here that I think goes a little bit further back this year, which again keeps the material off of the foot and spreads the upper material out a bit more on the forefoot, which gives the impression that there's more room up here, but I actually don't think there is. I just think there's more volume up here for your toes, which I think for a lot of runners won't necessarily be a bad thing. I find the lateral toe box taper to be very similar to what I experienced in the Novablast 4, which means it swoops in maybe a little bit too early, but it never really gives me any issues. And again, overall, it fits me pretty much the same as the Novablast 4. I went true to size in this shoe as I did with the Novablast 4. This is a US men's size 9. And I wouldn't go up or down a size in this or half a size because, again, I think the fit is spot on for what I want in a trainer. Now, I will say that I have a high arch and a high volume foot, but my foot is neither wide nor narrow. I just think it's a normal foot. If you have a low volume foot that's narrow, yes, I can see where there is probably going to be a lot of room in this shoe. Though I don't know if I would recommend sizing half a size down or anything like that. So this may be one, if you have a narrow foot or a low volume foot, that you're going to need to try on first. And one thing I want to note about the upper is in the tongue. This now has the same tongue that's on the Superblast 2, which is that kind of stretchy neoprene-like material that has some padding in it. And when I first took this out of the box, I thought the tongue was way too short, to the point where it's actually going to be a problem. Even here, it looks too short. But when this shoe's on foot and you're lacing up, the tongue is actually the perfect length. So it's an optical thing that makes this look too short, but overall the tongue is just fine. Moving to the midsole of this shoe, this is really the star of this update. It's the new FFBlastMax foam, Asics' new training foam. Now, I don't have the best experience with FFBlast Plus. It was not a foam that I liked very much. My overall impression of it was, when it was new, it was just very dull. It just felt very blocky. It didn't feel fun. It didn't have that quality that a lot of people said was amazing about FFBlast Plus. But after about 40K, it broke in and it became springy and bouncy and fun. And then I understood why people like FFBlast Plus so much. But the problem is, after another 50K or so, that springiness, that funness, that resiliency that was in the foam completely went away, and the foam just became spongy to me. The worst possible feeling for a foam. You just sink into it and that's it. And I really did not get on with FFBlast Plus. Last year in the Novablast 4, we had FFBlast Plus Eco, which I found firmer than FFBlast Plus, but I found it more consistent. Over all of the miles I put in that shoe, I actually didn't find it broke down and turned spongy at any point. It maybe wasn't as dynamic as FFBlast Plus, but it was close enough, and more importantly, it was consistent, and I appreciated that. But this shoe and the foam in this shoe really is something else. And the best way I can describe how this foam feels is when FFBlast Plus was really good, really broken in. It was springy, it was bouncy, it was, energetic, it was resilient, it was fun to run in. That's what FFBlast Max feels like out of the box. And over the 50 miles that I put in this shoe across all types of running, it's been consistent since the first kilometer I put in this shoe. So that's huge. FFBlastMax is springy, it's fun, it's energetic, and it's consistent. And that consistency is something I'm happy to see in a training foam from Asics, finally. The other big story about this midsole is really the tooling of the midsole in two specific areas. In the heel, it's become a much better heel striking shoe. That big outrigger that was in the Novablast 4 is now gone, and I believe the heel bevel has been moved in just a little bit, and that makes the heel striking transition just much more natural. You don't have this big thing hanging off the back of the shoe anymore that makes that feel very unnatural, very rough. Heel striking in the shoe is very smooth, and it gets you into the midfoot and off the toe very nicely. I think that's a huge change for heel strikers in this shoe. You still have all the foam built up over the heel and this sort of bucket seat feel that's really supporting your heel back here, but you're just getting a nicer, smoother transition. The other thing, which I don't hear a lot of people talking about, is overall the width of this shoe is slightly narrower, and I'm talking about 3 to 5 millimeters over the Novablast 4. It's a narrower just footprint everywhere, but that makes this shoe much more agile and much more versatile than the 4 ever was. So the combination of the new foam and that extra agility that's in the shoe really makes this shoe something else. Now I'm going to do the deep dive comparison between the Novablast 4 and the Novablast 5. That will be the next video on the channel. That will be linked in the description. There'll be a card on the screen once that's published. But there's a lot more to talk about in the subtle differences between the two shoes, but the change in the foam, the change in the tooling, and the narrowing of the contact patch really make this shoe something else. And moving to the outsole of this shoe, there's actually two things to talk about here. And the first one is the trampoline effect. Now, that's part of the midsole, right? Well, not necessarily, because there's a change here with this trampoline effect. That's something I have commented that I don't necessarily always like in the Novablast. In the Novablast 3, for example, I just felt that trampoline effect like poking into the ball of my foot, which I really didn't like. In the Novablast 4, I didn't really feel it, but I also didn't really feel like it was doing that much for me. There's a little pop, but it wasn't really that noticeable. But in this shoe, the trampoline effect is very noticeable, and I think it's two things. They seem to have shifted it up a little bit, so as a 4-foot striker, I'm now really landing right on that trampoline effect. I'm getting the maximum benefit of that bounce from the trampoline effect. And if you're a heel striker or mid-foot striker, you're now going to be rolling off the trampoline effect. So by shifting it forward a little bit, it's made this shoe much, much more energetic off the toe. And this is why I'm putting in the outsole. The rubber coverage now is also much more vast in the trampoline effect, and it's shifted forward. So again, as a 4-foot striker, I'm now landing on rubber in the middle of the 4-foot, and as a heel striker or mid-foot striker, you're now rolling off rubber. So while this does maintain that classic Novablast rails of rubber only on the medial and lateral rails, this change to the trampoline effect and this piece of rubber make this shoe run like there's a lot more rubber on the 4-foot of the shoe and just in this shoe in general. Now, the Ahar Low rubber compound that's in this shoe, I have found extremely grippy on really any surface. I have not been struggling for grip at all in this shoe. I did struggle a little bit in the Novablast 4, and the Novablast 3 was like being on ice for me. But this shoe, no problem. And I've been running a lot in wet concrete, wet asphalt, wet leaves, wet moss on concrete, which is probably the slippiest thing you could possibly find. Wet track. I've been running track in this shoe. Standing water on the track in the turns. Absolutely no problems. I've even done some light trail running in this shoe just to test out grip. No problem. So I'm not finding any grip issues, and I find this piece of rubber being more on the 4-foot just makes this shoe feel like there's more rubber underfoot, but I'm still getting that nice, soft, compliant, exposed foam outsole feel that is trademarked for the Novablast, which gives this shoe a lot of its feel. Again, I think Asics has really nailed the mix in the outsole in this shoe. And since this is a 50-mile review, there is a durability component here. Now, this Ahar Low compound, I have found it very durable. I tend to be very rough on the lateral side of my right shoe because I scuff a little bit. I'm seeing no wear here. Usually this is going to start to show some smoothness or I'm wearing down the outsole material. I see none of that here right now. Traditionally in Novablast, the trampoline effect would also wear pretty quickly for me. I'm also seeing zero wear here. So overall, this compound, the Ahar Low compound, is proving to be very durable for me. Additionally, I also find this very squeaky. It's almost like a court shoe. On asphalt or concrete, this is just sort of squeak, 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 which is really interesting to me. That says it's gripping really well, but overall, I'm very impressed with this outsole. With all of the specs out of the way, let's get into the ride of the shoe. But to get into the ride of the shoe, let's define what this shoe actually is. Now, when we're talking about a trainer, there's a lot of trainers that we see or we're told that we need in a rotation. We see things like cushion trainer or max cushion trainer, performance trainer or super trainer, tempo trainer or a workout shoe, which I know a lot of people consider that to be a super trainer or performance trainer, but to me they're separate. A tempo trainer is much more focused around speed. Or a long run trainer or a volume trainer, that trainer that's just going to allow you to kind of build up all the distance and really get all those training kilometers in. But in my mind, a daily trainer is a shoe that needs to be able to do all of that. It needs to be able to tick all of those boxes. And in the Novablast 5's case, I really think it does. For the first time, I think I can call the Novablast a true daily trainer. That's not something I would have labeled the Novablast 4. That was more of a cushioned or long run trainer to me. It could do the other stuff, but it wasn't really excelling at it. And the Novablast 3, while I know a lot of people consider that the all-around daily trainer, I didn't. I just couldn't really find anything that shoe did well for me. But the Novablast 5 definitely ticks all these boxes. Additionally, a daily trainer needs to really do 5 things for me. It needs to be neutral, and the Novablast 5 definitely is a neutral shoe. There's a place for stability, there's a place for a stability shoe, but generally I think most people will do fine with a neutral shoe. It needs to be flexible. I want to feel my foot working in the shoe. And while there is a lot of foam in the Novablast 5, I'm definitely finding it flexible. It needs to be non-plated, which kind of goes with flexibility. And there's no plate in the Novablast 5. It's all just a beautiful chunk of the new FFBlastMax foam, and it's brilliant. It needs to have a lower rocker because I don't like a lot of rocker in a daily trainer because I find that limits the use case and it gets in the way, especially for faster running. And the Novablast 5, while it has a mild rocker, there's enough flexibility in that, especially as a 4-foot striker, that I'm really flattening out the rocker that is in the shoe, so it's not really giving me a problem. And as I just pointed out in the outsole, we need a full rubber outsole or, good rubber coverage. And I think the Novablast 5 also ticks that. So if we look at the Novablast 5, it ticks everything here. And as I said, this is truly now a daily trainer. Now, to get to the confidence that I could call this shoe a daily trainer, I have put over 50 miles on the shoe. And for the past 7 days, I've done every run in this shoe, which includes a long run of almost 18K, that's a long run for me right now because I'm not doing marathon volume. I've done some general easy running in the shoe. I did a hill run in this shoe, not really a workout, but just running on rolling hills. And I did 2 track workouts in this shoe, both speed focused. And this shoe excelled across all of those, which is why I'm really confident in calling this a daily trainer now. And I'm really surprised because this shoe just feels like it's too much shoe. It's too much foam. There's just too big of a shoe here. But this shoe is nimble, it's agile, it's fun, it's responsive. It's very resilient. The pop off the toe because of the new foam and this adjusted trampoline effect, it just all works. For the long run of 18K or just general easy running, I expected this shoe to do well. I wasn't surprised that it did as well as it did. For the hill running, which again wasn't really a workout, this isn't a shoe that I would have thought to pick for that stuff. Because again, it's a little bit too much foam, it's a little bit too soft, and initially I thought there was going to be too much rocker. I like a more traditional lower stack shoe for that because I really want to dig in and feel me toeing off when I'm running up or down the hills. But this shoe did really well, and that's really where I really learned that the rocker in this shoe isn't really something that's going to get in my way. It flattens out very nicely, but I'm getting a lot of resilience and pop in the foam, and it's a very nice feeling for hill running. And if you're going down very extreme hills or long descents where you need to heel strike a little bit to brake or to save your quads, this shoe does wonderfully well. And that's where I found that this redesigned heel bevel works really, really well. But where this shoe really, really surprised me was on the track. Now, I've been doing a lot of track focused workouts. I'm focused on speed right now, 800 and 1500 meter track distances. That's what I'm focused on. I would never have thought of a Novablast as a shoe to do my workout in. But I did 2 workouts. The first workout was a mix of 200s, 400s, and a 600. And this shoe did really well. There was also a wet track with a lot of standing water and heavy wind that morning. Excellent grip, excellent ability and stability around the turns where I thought this shoe would be very squirrely because of grip and because of all the foam and the softness in the forefoot of the shoe. But it did really well. And my times, while they were slower, because I was doing them in a trainer, they weren't, obnoxiously slow. They were right where they should be based on the level of effort of doing that type of workout in a trainer. Again, really surprised. The second track workout I did in this was a mixed dry and wet track with some drizzle in the air. And it was a 10 by 200 workout, a true speed focused workout. And while I never hit my fastest 200 in this shoe, they are all within the ballpark, and it was very nice across the entire speed workout. So this shoe really surprised me with its ability to go fast. And the paces I took this shoe through were really from about 3:15 per kilometer to about, easy is probably like 5 minutes to 5:30 per kilometer pace for me. So it's through all of those paces. So really faster than my 1 mile pace all the way up to marathon pace. This shoe excelled at everything. So this truly is a daily trainer, and it may be one of the best daily trainers I've run in some time. And we're starting 2025 off for both Asics and just daily trainers in general with a really, really strong note. In case you can't tell, I'm a big fan of this shoe. I finally understand why people have loved the Novablast over the past 4 generations. I have finally found the Novablast that does it for me. And the Novablast 5 really does it for me. Even this colorway, I like this colorway. Even though I think it's very Gengar-esque, I still think it's a great colorway. And I think as far as Asics' launch colorways go, this is one of their nicer looking ones that they put out over the past few years. So big fan of this shoe. This is a shoe that you're going to see on this channel quite a bit in 2025 in versus videos and some other type of content. And it's one that I look forward to spending quite a bit of time in 2025. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.